And then he also said, في الشرع والشعر, also in poetry. Humility and forbearance is always praised in poetry, right? So he's saying that you'll find this in the Sharia and in Shi'r. وَالنَّثَرَ الْحُكَمَةِ, and all the sages also in their writing. وَوَصْفَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ طُرًّا بِهِمَا, and that all of the prophets, all of them have been characterized with humility and forbearance. None of them were known as being arrogant or easily angered. They were all known to have hilm wa tawadu'. And then he said, وَدَفْعُهُ يَحْصُلُ بِاسْتِشْعَارِ أَلَّيْسَ فَاعِلٌ سِوَى الْقَهَارِ. You can prevent it or suppress it by recognizing that there's no action except that it's from Allah. So part of when things happen that make you angry, you have to take some breath and just say, La ilaha illallah. This is a bala from Allah. It's a tribulation from Allah to see, أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, who of you are the best in action. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيد شَدِيدَ الصُّرْعَةِ وَإِنَّمَا الشَّدِيد مَنْ غَلَبَ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. The strong man is not the one who can wrestle people down, but the strong man is the one who overcomes his self when he becomes angry. That's the shadid. That's the real strong man. It's not the other thing. And one of the things that Imam al-Ghazali says is the hamaqa of some people, he said, is that they see virility and this macho type of posturing as a good character or quality. They become completely sore. And so he said, you'll even see a man who brags about his criminal exploits and how he robbed somebody and fought him and did these things, and he'll actually brag about what he thinks is courage. Right? And it's not. It's all, there's nothing virtuous in it whatsoever. So that's recognizing that only Allah is the one that, actually the hadith says first, if you're standing, to sit. And if you're sitting, to recline. And then if that neither of those help, to go do wudu, and then to start praying. So he does it this way. But doing wudu will actually put off the heat, because anger is fire. And anger is from shaitan. It's the quality of shaitan. And one day the Prophet ﷺ was there and somebody became angry, and his face became red and his veins started bulging, and the Prophet ﷺ said, Subhanallah, have you noticed how one of you, when he gets angry, his face starts looking like a shaitan? And he said, I word that if he said it, that would be removed from him. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And I was once in a conflict type resolution situation, and it was really interesting because it started getting heated and both parties stood up. They were on couches and they both stood up at the same time. And I made them sit down, but that's the nature of anger. You start rising, and the way that you overcome that is to sit down. Just to sit down. If you're in a room and you begin to feel anger, leave the room. If somebody's making you angry, just leave the room. Go to another place, relax, sit down, and let your anger subside, and you can go back. And this is a practice. If you do it, it works. And if you don't, you'll either end up duking it out, and if he's bigger than you, he beats you up. And if he's smaller than you, everybody sees you as a heel because you're picking on somebody smaller than you. So, just the best thing to do is just avoid it. There's no benefit in it. There's none. It's just empty, meaningless tripe, and it's just best to get out of it. So that's the sunnah, to do that. Right? Cold water, to be quiet, to sit down, right? And then ta'awwud, to say a'udhu billahi minash shaitan. Those all came in the sunnah. Now, Imam al-Ghazali said that one man who had a fierce temper actually hired a man to insult him and paid him money to say like, ya kalb, ya himar. And he would listen until he could control himself. That's probably extreme. But the point is, you know, people took these things very seriously. Because you don't want to have anger. It's a horrible quality. Now, there is a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-hiddatu ta'tari khiyara ummati." Anger will even afflict the best of my ummah. And nobody displays that better than Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anhu. Sayyidina Umar became very angry. But if you look at Sayyidina Umar, his development as a human being in his Islam, radiallahu anhu, by the end of it, Umar was not a person that his anger ever got the best of him. In fact, it was the opposite. He would tend to be actually very forgiving. And you can see this in his later period. And even when he was stabbed to death, you know, the first thing he asked, was it a Muslim? And the man said no, and he praised Allah that a Muslim didn't kill him. He just didn't want that a Muslim would have done that to him. You know, he said, Alhamdulillah. And that was his nature, you know. I mean, even though he was very ferocious and a lion of Allah, he didn't. And once the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with women from the Quraysh in Medina, and Omar came in, and they immediately all fled into the other room. This was before the hijab came down. And they were sitting, and they all fled into the room and hid behind this curtain. And Omar comes in, he sees this, and the Prophet's laughing, and he said, "Ma adhakaka ya Rasulullah, why are you laughing?" He said, "I'm laughing at these Qurayshi women. When they see you, they flee." And then he went over and he called these women back, you know, and they said, Omar said, "A'udhu billah, how is it that you flee from me and you're not shy before the Messenger of Allah? He's more worthy to be shy before." And they said, "But you're aghladu wa afaddu. You're like you're meaner and harsher than the Messenger of Allah. He doesn't get angry." And the Prophet ﷺ, he laughed and he said, "Ya Sayyidina Umar, لو سرقت فجا لسرق الشيطان فجا آخر." If you went down a path, shaitan would go down another path. You know, I mean, that he was. That idea of learning to control the anger, Umar radiallahu anhu is really an example of somebody who mastered that quality. He really mastered it. And but again, he's adl, and adl is rooted in ghadab, but it's a healthy ghadab. He wants justice because there's indignation. He becomes angry when he's wrong. He wants to right that wrong. And even went to kill the Messenger of Allah ﷺ before he became Muslim. That did in a desire to right a wrong. He felt it was wrong. So it was always rooted in his belief. He had a very strong sense of justice. And the Khattab family were traditionally in the Jahiliyyah Arab culture. So that is and let me see. The Bahr will go on. I'm going to start. Is there questions? Was there a question over here earlier? They do have what? I mean, personally, for children that are under 7, you have to really be careful about becoming angry with them. If they're over 7, then you need to display discipline. I mean, they have to be disciplined. In fact, interestingly enough, I didn't mention this, but in these 3 souls, the question was about, you know, getting angry if you're a teacher and you need to establish discipline. And in the souls, the 3 souls, the stages are the first 7 years are the appetitive soul. So that's why you see children are constantly eating, wanting, you know, it's all shahawat and fulfilling their appetitive soul. And then the second 7 years is the ghadab. And then the third is the rational or the ilm. Right? So this is the first. So if they're in the second, this is why the hadith says لَعِبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. And lu'b is fulfilling shahwa. right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said that there's no lu'b in Islam except one of them is with the spouse, right? That's a good lu'b, to play with your wife. And the Prophet ﷺ played with his wife. It was muda'aba and this type thing. So the hadith of Sayyidina Ali was لَعِبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. Play with them for 7 years. During this period of the appetitive soul, just allow them to indulge themselves. It's part of what they're meant to do. They're discovering the world. And it's all sensual because they've been in a spiritual realm and now they've moved into the realm of sensory, and so they have to come into their bodies and they have to experience it. And that's why oftentimes children, things will happen to them that are quite traumatic, like they get burnt. In those first 7 years, they fall from high places. These are all learning to come into their body and discovering that they have a body. It's a hikmah of Allah that those things happen to children, because they're literally to teach them the limitations of the body, that the body has limits, unlike the ruh, which is a more limitless type of entity. The body is limited, and the sharia is a protection for the body. Touch fire. You stay away from high places. You don't endanger yourself. And so, you allow them to discover the world those first 7 years. It really is discovering the world. And that's why a ghulam, the root of ghulam is to lust. Ghaluma means to lust. So it's a lusty experience. They're very sensuous, right? They like touch a lot. Children like to be touched a lot. And it's part of their development, of discovering their bodies. And then this period, he said, أَدِّبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. Now you have to discipline them, because now their ghadab needs to be disciplined. They're moving into another stage, right? They need now to have discipline. And the discipline is when you see them getting angry, you don't allow them to do that, right? Children, you don't let children get angry at the parents. That's a bad sign. You have to teach them to control their anger. And if you're not controlling your anger, it's a disaster. فَاقِدُ شَيْءٍ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. If you don't have something, you can't give it to somebody else. So if they see you getting angry all the time, they're just going to imitate the behavior. And then you'll wonder, where'd they get that temper? Right? And it's from you, because you're their model. So the ta'deeb comes in those next 7 years. And then he said, then خَلِلُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. Befriend them for 7 years, because this last stage is the stage of ilm. Now they're moving into the stage where they need, they need your guidance, they need your mushawara, they need your counsel, because you're going to help direct them, to learning, to what they're going to do with their education, those type things. That's a traditional model anyway. Any other? Mm-hmm.
You differentiate more between hilm and qabl.
Oh, it's interesting. The word for hilm. What's it mean in Arabic? I know, but what's the root word though? What are ahlam? When they said sappahu ahlamana, the intellect. So really, forbearance is a sign of intellect. Why? Because you have your quwwa al-ghadabiyya under control. It's guided by your rational soul. So your aql is working. Because the aql it's an iqal, ya'qiluhu. The aql is what puts the irascible and the concupiscent soul in check. It's an iqal for it, right? Aql means to prevent. And that's what the rational mind is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep the ghadab and the shahwa in check. And if it doesn't, you're not aql, you're not halim, you're himar or whatever. That's what they say. If somebody gets really angry, they say, ya himar. You're like a donkey or something like that. Why? Because he's acting like a beast, he's not acting like a human being. And usually he's a himar too, because he's angry too.
Yeah, but the difference between hilm and tahallum, right?
A tahallum, very good point. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I forgot to mention that. I'm really glad you brought that up. there is a hadith, and this is really important, because some of us are going to say, my God, I can't do any of this, it's all too hard, and I'm a mess, and I get angry, and I do this and that, and I eat too much chocolate, or whatever. Now, the hadith says, and I'm glad that Abu Dhar brought this up, the hadith says, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. Knowledge is through acquisition. You acquire knowledge. You're not born alim. You become an alim. How did you do it? Through effort, mujahada. Right? The alim is the one he struggles to learn. He gets up in the night, he studies, he reads, he goes to the dars, he listens, he takes notes, he studies, he reviews, all that. That's mujahada. So you weren't born with that knowledge, it's something that you acquire. Hilm is the same thing. The hadith says, وَإِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمِ. Now what happens when you become an alim? Somebody who's an alim, if you see an alim, what does it appear to you? You don't see that he was a student. It seems like they always had that. Right? That's what it seems. You don't see when they were doing all their studying and all their work and all that. The same with the halim. You don't see when he was struggling with it. You think it's like he was born that way. It's something you acquire, and that's what Umar radiallahu anhu, he acquired it, tahallum. He didn't, and then tahallum is from tafa'ul, which is takalluf. You have to work for it. It's hard. Now, really important point. Imam al-Ghazali uses the metaphor of a calligrapher. He says, what do you do when you have a bad handwriting? And this is a metaphor. What do you do when you're angry? He said you go to somebody who has an excellent hand, and you watch him, and then you ask him to draw you the letters, and then you go home, and you keep doing the letters over and over again. And initially they're going to be lousy. But suddenly, about a month or 2 months later, you start noticing there's an improvement, but it's still not mastery, it's far from it. But it looks much better. And somebody who's not even started, he'll say, you have great handwriting. But if the master looks at it, he said, this is terrible. Right? Because sayyat al-abrar, right? Hasanat al-abrar, sayyat al-muqarrabin, you're moving up in ranks. Now, what happens when you become a master? You see them drawing, like I watched Muhammad Zakaria, I took a lesson in calligraphy from him, the first lesson I had, and I watched him do it, and I was thinking, I can do that. Wallahi, I thought that. I said, that looks so easy. Right? Because he's a master. He is a master. Like he's American master of calligraphy. He wins awards in Turkey and things. But I didn't see all those nights and years that he was doing it. Now he just makes it look like he was born writing perfect calligraphy. And then when I got the pen and started doing it, and it's like jumping up and down. Really, it was hard. It flowed across the paper. That's because of mastery. And so the same thing happened now. The really interesting thing about this. So what do you do when you want good character? You do three things. One, you learn what it is. You have to learn what bad character is and what good character is. And that's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing. We're doing the first stage. You have to learn what good character is, and you have to learn what bad character is. The second stage is mujahada. وَالَّذِينَ جَهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبَلَنَا. Those who struggle, for our sake, we will guide them to our path. But then you have to, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. You have to have صحبة. الْمَرْءُ عَلَى دِينِ خَلِيلِهِ. You have to find people with good character, and you have to spend time with them. And there's another benefit in being with people who get angry easily, right? Is to recognize how unpleasant it is. And this is why Imam Shafi'i, once somebody asked him, how did you get such excellent character? He said, I listened to what my detractors said about me, and then I looked into my soul to see if it was true, and when it was, I struggled with myself until I removed it. Sayyidina Isa was asked by a man once, how did you get such excellent character? And the prophets are born with it, but this is what the tradition says. He said, I looked at the bad character of people and I avoided it. Right? So part of it is doing a mujahada. But the third stage is to be with the person who has good character. And Sidi Ahmed Zarruq says, وَهُوَ مَعْدُوم good luck, right? It's difficult to find. But we shouldn't ever despair, and at least we should be trying I'll tell you, this stuff, it really works. I'm serious. I mean, I'm nowhere where I'd like to be, but really it helped me a lot to learn a lot of these things and to just, struggle with myself as much as I can. And hopefully, you get better and you improve and you do change, right? Seriously. I mean, ghadab was a real serious trouble for me for a long, long time, and it's much less so now. And part of that is aging, thank goodness. Right? Imam Sayyidina Ali said that youth is a darbun min al-junun. It's a type of madness. وَدَوَاءُهُ الشَّيْخُوخَةِ. And the cure is to get old. So, Yeah, anger with the parents. That's then you should be angry at the act, not at the actor. In other words, it should upset you what's being done, the action of the person, but if it's your father or your mother, you have to be really careful. If you're able to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahi 'anil munkar, then you should. Dhann al-ifada is the wujub is based on dhann al-ifada and not leading to a worse fitna. But the parents, you have to be really careful about it. The Prophet ﷺ, a man came to the Prophet and he said that my father takes my money and it really angers me. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Anta wa maluka li abik. You and your wealth belong to your father. In other words, he was the means by which you were given existence. So the parents really have a high maqam in Islam. It's just, that's a given. And the best thing to do with the parents is recognize that they're human beings, they have their limitations. I had a teacher once who told me, he wasn't a Muslim, he was a very wise person, he was a good teacher. And he said to me once that he thanked his father because he taught him how not to be a father. And he said he really did, his father was so harsh on him that he did the opposite with his children. And he said in the end he realized that it was a gift that his father gave him. And he was genuine in that. He wasn't saying, he was saying, I realize, obviously, and that's looking at the good side of something. Obviously it'd be better if you had a father who was a good example and showed you how to be a father, not how to not be a father. But the idea is taking the worst situation and making the best of it. And that's a gift. And that's hikmah. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ حِكْمَةً فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. I mean, that is hikmah. And that's the beauty of Islam, is that in any situation, it can be beneficial for the mu'min. Assalamu alaikum.